Hey y'all, well can you believe it? We're actually going to be starting Exodus, and I'm so glad that y'all have been patient with me. I've been sick, and I'm still a little bit sick. I don't know, I don't think it's another COVID. I just got over COVID. But I don't know, it's just, it's I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's cold, and down here in the South, we're not used to that, and so we have the heat just blasting, and that heat, I don't know, maybe it's just driving me out, but I did not feel good at all yesterday, and I just apologize. I'm again behind, but I want to get right into this and talking about Exodus. I feel like when we talk about these books of the Bible, and I hope you've not let me hold you up, and in the future, if I get behind, don't let me hold you up. I will give you the readings, and just go ahead and just keep reading the Bible. Just keep reading, and we'll catch up with each other. I'm going to do a better job of labeling it. I feel like because we did, it took 12 parts to get all the way through Genesis, and that's fine because I am not going to shorten this just to say, oh, we did it, check, no. We're going to make sure that we thoroughly cover the story, because it's your story. It's my story. And people say, well, I'm not Jewish. Well, eventually we have the New Testament where God had planned all along, even right now. It was part of the plan. It's just it's not brought forth yet. Even the angels did not know. No one knew but God. The Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit knew from before Genesis 1 that they were going to create man. Man was going to fall once he was given freedom, that he would be redeemed from the fall, and that the story of God's people, starting with the Israelites, would end with all people who would choose to believe. Not just the Jews, but the Gentiles. And Gentiles are anyone who is not a Jew. So we're Gentiles. I'm a Gentile. Some of you watching may be Jewish. I have some friends who are Christians and they have Jewish history and ancestry. So that's always so exciting to me to explore with them. And that in itself could be a whole nother conversation. But anyway, okay, so we're getting into Exodus, and God basically is telling them, get up, we're going to go somewhere. And you would think to these people who had now become enslaved, which we're fixing to see in this first reading. I'm going to give you this quick overview, though, first, because I think it's exciting for us to think through in the overview what we're fixing to talk about, because I think it helps us anticipate, right? I'm sorry, y'all, because my throat's hurting a little bit. I have to drink something warm to get through this. Also, if y'all would be praying for my voice, I will in fact be singing for Sisters in Christ, the live event this year. There was a pre-recording that will be worldwide, and they had to get someone else because I wasn't ready with COVID and the death of my father to be able to sing 4 songs, but I will in the live version be doing 2 of the songs. And I assume that the other gal that I usually sing with, Tan, and the girl that handled the recording, which I actually don't know who that is, but she'll be there too, I guess. But I will, not in this video, but in a future video, I'll do a separate video actually for February 26th, a live event. And I'm not sure if that's going to be live streamed, but the world wide live stream, which was recorded, it's not me, but you still need to watch it. It's not about me. It's about these incredible testimonies, beautiful songs to encourage us. So I'll put that in a separate video all by itself. But that being said, I'm having to watch my voice. And yet this is a lot of talking. So, and I'm practicing the songs. So you have people who we're fixing to find out. Do you remember when in Genesis, when Joseph had, those dreams, and he had stored up all the grain for the Pharaoh, and he was blessed for it and all of that. And one of the things that he told him is store this up because there's going to be a famine. And as the famine continued, and then he was reunited with his brother, his father, all that happened. But then the people, the Egyptian people would need to come to him, and he would need to give house goods out of the Pharaoh's stash because, he'd stored it up. But they had to pay. And so he was collecting taxes and stuff. I mean, not taxes. It was like he was one. He was collecting money as he gave the grain. People were glad to pay for it because, they had money. They did not have grain. And then they were out of money. And so a year later, they came back to him and they said, I'm just doing a quick recap because it matters where we are. At the end of Genesis, they basically had said, now we don't have any money. And he said, well, you can give me your cattle, your livestock, and all that good stuff. So they did that. And then they came back a year later, and they said, we don't have any money or livestock now. All we can do is offer our land and ourselves as slaves. So the Egyptians were slaves of the Pharaoh. They had become slaves. And what I never really understood was if the Pharaoh was the king of Egypt, he kind of owned it all anyway, unless maybe in that day the government didn't do that. So, but now they did. Now they had it all. And they were enslaved. And what that means is they were indentured servants. That means that you have to give service until your service pays off what you owe. So keep in mind the Egyptians are enslaved. Now we get into Exodus and we see that there is a flip. And we're going to talk about that in a minute, where it goes from the Hebrew people, with the Egyptian people being enslaved to the Hebrew people the Israelites being enslaved. And this is the big story, right, of Exodus and their whole history that they celebrate each year when they do a really special dinner that kind of goes through the Exodus. I've been to one. It's called a Jewish Seder dinner. And if you look that up, usually, especially Messianic temples, meaning they are Jewish temples, but they're Messianic, meaning those Jews who have realized that Jesus is the Messiah and they have become Christians with Jewish ancestry. In other words, they're Jews, but they've turned their life over to Christ. And they always do a different job of what the Jewish Seder dinner represents, because they pull the Old Testament together with the New and show you Jesus in all of it. They're amazing to go to. So anyway, so we see that, what we're fixing to see is that, and this may be two-part because I did want to give you a recap. What we get to see is that they're enslaved and they're getting this opportunity to go. And usually you would think, then they're going, yes, let's go. But some of them, while they don't like their current environment, it's known. The unknown is too frightening. It's been 400 years now since Joseph moved his family to Egypt, and the descendants of Abraham had become to around 2 million people. So that's a lot of people, and that's threatening the new Pharaoh. Remember, we had just had the death of Joseph and his brothers in Genesis 50, in verse 22. But the families continued to live in Egypt. And before he died, he said, God will surely come to help you and lead you out of this land of Egypt. He will bring you back to the land he solemnly promised to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And he made the sons of Israel swear to the oath that when they did that they would take his body, his bones, to go be buried with their ancestors. So because of all these 2 million Jewish people, Hebrews, he's starting to feel like the foreigners, the Hebrews, were outnumbering him and the Egyptians. And so he was concerned, he's frightened, and he decides to make them slaves to balance out the power. So that's what we're fixing to reading about. And as through a series of events, we're going to see that Moses was born. We're going to see that he became the prince in Pharaoh's palace. We're going to see the burning bush. We're going to see Moses return to Egypt to lead peoples out of slavery, and that the Pharaoh, who would be confronted with a ton of situations, plagues, a cycle of plagues, and promises that are made and are broken, and eventually Israel is torn from his grasp, and so they start mobilizing this huge group of people, which is no small task. And they marched out of Egypt, through the Red Sea, and into the wilderness. And so, despite all that God had done to show his power, you remember during the day, or we're going to read about during the day, he would have a cloud to protect them from the heat, and the night he would have a fire that would help light the way, and he would provide them food. He would give them a chance to worship, a place to worship. And yet he still judged their disobedience and their their lack of faith. And then we have this big dramatic culmination of meeting at Mount Sinai, and Joseph and God giving him the Ten Commandments, that now they're going to have rules for right living, because why do we have rules? Because we're living wrong, we're not doing it right. So he gives instruction, really. And isn't it better to be really clear on what the rules are, so you know what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong? But God also wants us to have a relationship with him enough that even without having that all in front of us, we know him so well, we know when we're doing wrong. We know when we're doing right. But the rules are nice to have there so we can be very clear. And so as we look through this, I want you to, and I want me to, think about, is there anything specifically God's asking you to do? It can be a small thing. For me, it may not be out changing the world. It could be this Bible study. It could be me singing, using my voice, a specific task. We have to trust him. Is it that you're taking care of a family member? Is it that you've got children to raise? Is it that you've been through a divorce and you just feel like you have no hope? Have you lost a loved one? All these things where we're in positions where we have to trust God, and we have to lean into his moral teachings to us. In other words, the world's going to change what morality is. It's going to make it relevant to all. God never said, I want to make it relevant to all. I want all to follow me. I'm not saying that I will follow you. I'm saying you should follow me. And so Exodus is really a story of God guiding. So with this recap, let's get into Exodus chapter 1. Okay? And I hope you're going to enjoy it and learn a lot from it. I'll talk to you again in a minute.